Good morning, America. Escalating attacks. Iranian missiles slam into Israel. At least 10 people reported killed and 100 others injured. Israel carrying out its own new attacks on Iran, striking this oil depot. World leaders now working to avoid an all-out war. Is diplomacy still on the table?
Urgent manhunt for the suspect police say targeted 2 Minnesota state lawmakers and their spouses. Authorities say the suspect was dressed as a police officer when he allegedly came knocking. A possible motive and the price on his head this morning.
Parade and protest. The massive military parade steps off at the National Mall, showcasing America's arsenal, while more than 2,000 so-called No Kings protests are held across the country, many peaceful, but some turning violent as police clash with the crowd.
Court case roundup. The judge in the sex trafficking and racketeering trial of Sean Diddy Combs reconsiders dismissing a juror. And in a separate case, jurors deliberate the fate of Karen Reed in her murder retrial.
A new study on small kids and screen time and the link to a child's emotional and social well-being. Dr. Sutton looks at the findings, what parents need to know.
And sharing their wisdom. This Father's Day, we're looking at the dads gaining popularity on TikTok.
I'm helping Daddy.
With advice on everything from recipes to repairs.
If you've got a broken light bulb like this, here's a trick for getting it out.
And don't forget the dad jokes.
Live from ABC News in New York, this is Good Morning America.
And we do say Good Morning America. We also say Happy Father's Day to you. Happy Father's Day.
Happy Father's Day, Whit.
We get one day. We get one.
You do. You get one.
And it's a special day
Thank you.
because this is it. This is our final broadcast from Times Square. We will see you tomorrow from downtown Manhattan, but there's a lot to talk about this morning right here. President Trump's military parade happening hours after nationwide protests against his policies. More than 2,000 protests in all 50 states, most of them peaceful, with Americans making their voices heard. But some did turn violent, police and protesters clashing in downtown L.A. overnight.
Also, that urgent manhunt happening right now for the suspect wanted for fatally shooting a Minnesota state lawmaker and wounding another. The state's governor calling it politically motivated.
Yes, we'll get to all that, but we do start with the new waves of attacks between Israel and Iran, the deaths and destruction mounting on both sides, and today's scheduled negotiations over Iran's nuclear program, also a casualty. ABC's Marcus Moore joins us live from Bat Yam, Israel, with the very latest. Good morning, Marcus.
Janae, good morning to you. We are just south of Tel Aviv at the site where an Iranian missile landed on a residential building overnight, and you can see the damage. And also, crews have been urgently searching for 3 people who are said to be missing in that rubble. And Janae, we also learned overnight that several people died here, including children. Overnight, Iran and Israel trading more fire, both nations carrying out fresh waves of deadly attacks. In Israel, videos circulating online capturing this massive strike in the coastal town of Bat Yam. At least 6 people killed, including 2 children, and more than 100 wounded, according to Israel's emergency services. Here you can see the aftermath. First responders rushing to the scene, desperately searching for survivors amid the rubble. 3 residents still missing. Iran's barrage of dozens of missiles and drones seen soaring over Jordan towards Israel.
Oh my God.
And flying over Jerusalem, with sirens blaring from the north down to Tel Aviv. Israel's air defense system, including the Iron Dome, intercepting some of the aerial assault, like this Iranian drone. But several missiles evading the system, hitting their targets. Medics saying at least 4 people were killed and 14 injured in a direct hit on the Arab-Israeli town of Tamra. Israel also intensifying its attacks. This massive fire raging at an Iranian oil depot after an Israeli strike, according to the Iranian Ministry of Oil. Images throughout Tehran capturing the area in flames. And these new satellite images showing the before and after of this Revolutionary Guard military facility hit by the Israeli assault. Israel claims it has killed at least 9 Iranian nuclear scientists since its surprise operation earlier this week. Iran saying at least 78 people have been killed. the death toll climbing on both sides with no immediate signs of peace.
And back here at the scene, you can feel the tension. You can also feel the sadness here as these search and rescue teams continue their work. And Janae, this is just one site of at least 20 across Israel where there was either a direct hit or debris fell from the sky onto buildings. And it happens at a time when there are calls for diplomacy and restraint. But Janae, as you know, that meeting that was set to happen today on a potential new Iran nuclear deal, that meeting called off because of these Israeli strikes. Janae.
And we will see what happens next. Marcus Moore, we appreciate your reporting from the region. Now to the latest from the White House on the Iran-Israel situation. ABC's senior White House correspondent Selena Wang joins us from the White House with the latest. Good morning to you, Selena.
Good morning, Janae. The president said overnight that the U.S. had nothing to do with the attack on Iran and delivered this stark warning, posting on social media, if we are attacked in any way, shape or form by Iran, the full strength and might of the U.S. armed forces will come down on you at levels never seen before. However, we can easily get a deal done between Iran and Israel and end this bloody conflict. And Janae, this comes as U.S. officials have made clear that America isn't involved militarily in the Israeli attacks, but is helping to defend Israel and has shifted military resources to the region. And later today, President Trump leaves for Canada for the G7 as the world is on edge. And ahead of this summit, the president has been holding calls with world leaders, including with Russia's Vladimir Putin. Trump said yesterday that Putin called him to wish him a happy birthday and to talk about Middle East tensions. According to Russian state media, Putin offered to mediate between Iran and Israel. For weeks now, Trump has been trying to negotiate a nuclear deal with Iran and saying shortly before the original attacks began that the countries were close to a deal. In fact, today, the president's special envoy was scheduled to be in Oman meeting with Iranian officials for another round of negotiations, but Iran has called those plans off. With
All right, Selena Wang for us. Thank you. We turn now to the urgent manhunt for a suspect in what authorities believe is a politically motivated assassination. A Minnesota state lawmaker and her husband murdered inside their home. Another lawmaker and his wife shot but survived. ABC's Faith Abube is at the scene in Brooklyn Park, Minnesota with the latest. Faith, good morning.
Yeah, good morning to you. Investigators spent hours here yesterday at the home of the former state House Speaker who was shot and killed along with her husband yesterday. Police say they encountered that suspect right here in this driveway, and it turned into a gun battle. He then took off through the house through the back door, running.
This morning, an urgent manhunt underway after a man investigators say was posing as a police officer allegedly shot and killed a Minnesota lawmaker and her husband in their home. Police say the same suspect was involved in a separate attack just 90 minutes earlier, allegedly shooting and wounding another lawmaker and his wife.
Suspects posing as police officers shot two victims.
Police responding to reports of gunfire around 2 a.m. Saturday at the home of Democratic Senator John Hoffman and his wife Yvette just outside Minneapolis. Officers then checking on Democratic former House Speaker Melissa Hortman and her husband a few miles away at their Brooklyn Park home, only to find the two fatally shot.
They noticed that there was a police vehicle in the driveway with the lights, emergency lights on, and what appeared to be a police officer at the door coming out of the house. When our officers confronted him, the individual immediately fired upon the officers, who exchanged gunfire, and the suspect retreated back into the home.
Governor Tim Walz calling the deadly shooting politically motivated.
Speaker Hortman was someone who served the people of Minnesota with grace, compassion, humor, and a sense of service. She was a formidable public servant, a fixture and a giant in Minnesota.
Authorities now naming 57-year-old Vance Bolter as the suspect. Investigators say he was dressed as an officer, wearing a vest, a badge, and a taser, and was driving an SUV with police lights. The FBI releasing images they say are of him in a cowboy hat and wearing a latex mask outside one of the victims' homes. Investigators say they've recovered several firearms from Bolter's vehicle, along with No Kings flyers and writings mentioning the names of the victims, some abortion providers, and other Democratic lawmakers. Sources telling ABC News law enforcement is looking into whether he may have been motivated by extreme views on abortion.
Through the 90s, he really hated abortion. But we hardly ever talked. I haven't talked really about abortion for him for years.
His longtime friend David Carlson saying the suspect had been staying with him. Carlson's home raided Saturday. This just the latest in a string of violent attacks against lawmakers.
I've seen increased security for me, as have my colleague Senator Smith and all our members, as well as, of course, legislators.
And right now, there are hundreds of agents spread out across the area in this urgent manhunt. They have detained and questioned several people, but no one is in custody at this point. In the meantime, though, authorities have increased securities for some elected officials and others they believe may be at risk. There is a $50,000 reward on the table for information leading to that suspect's arrest. And Gio, I've talked to several of the neighbors here, some of them just heartbroken that this tragic event happened right here. Gio.
Heartbreaking and incredibly concerning. Faith, thank you so much for your reporting. Let's go ahead and bring in Chief Global Affairs Correspondent Martha Raddatz, who will be hosting ABC's This Week later this morning. Martha, Governor Tim Walz has now called these attacks targeted. What does this tell us about the threat environment that's happening in this country right now?
There is a very high threat environment, Gio, and people really feel it. Politicians, well-known people, this is something that scares them and should scare them. This was such a horrific attack, having someone walk to their homes and gun them down. I know on Capitol Hill there is much discussion about this. They will add security, and it is something that legislators are really demanding at this point. But there are so many people at risk. It is really, really hard to accomplish.
Hard to accomplish indeed. Okay, let's talk about Iran and Israel right now, because that is a very tense situation. You're talking to the Israeli ambassador to the U.S. this morning as these attacks just intensify. Is escalation just inevitable now?
You know, Gio, that's a great question, because it looks like it's hard to avoid. I mean, you have this conflict, this war, really. Iran and Israel are at war right now, and it is escalating. The Israelis say this will continue and be even more severe, and the U.S. is already involved. They're providing defense. They did not take part in the military activity itself, but Iran is surely looking at the U.S. and blaming them as well. They are stopping some of these missiles, not all of them. The amount of damage in Israel is alarming. Obviously, Israel hit a lot of sites in Iran as well, but the amount of damage and fatalities in Israel is truly alarming, and there are fears that this could very well escalate, Gio.
So much happening around the world. Martha Raddatz, thank you so much. And tune in to ABC's This Week later. Martha speaks with Senator Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota about the shootings of 2 lawmakers there. Plus, Israel's ambassador to the U.S., Michael Leiter, joins Martha to discuss Israeli strikes on Iran's nuclear program and Iran's retaliation. Janae.
All right, Gio, we're going to stay with politics and now turn to President Trump's military parade through the nation's capital and the nationwide protests against his administration's policies. We have team coverage this morning. ABC's Alex Stone is live in Los Angeles, but we're going to start with ABC's Alex Perche, who joins us from Washington. Good morning to you, Alex. You were out there amidst all those protesters.
That's right, Janae. And it was quite the contrast between what played out on the National Mall, a parade of pomp and circumstance, and the many protests and some unrest across the country.
From Atlanta to Arlington to Albuquerque to Anaheim, 2,000 separate demonstrations this weekend in all 50 states. So-called No King's Day protest voicing opposition to President Trump's agenda and a joint birthday celebration he threw for the U.S. Army and himself. Many protests peaceful, but some erupting into chaos. Gunfire breaking out during a demonstration in Salt Lake City, Utah. Police rushing to help one victim in critical condition. Authorities taking one man into custody and saying there are no other known threats to the community. A motive under investigation. In Los Angeles, police used flashbangs to break up crowds outside federal buildings downtown. Protesters seen running to safety. Demonstrations in Minnesota canceled after that deadly targeted shooting of Democratic lawmakers, authorities finding flyers for the protests in the suspect's vehicle. And in Charlotte, 2 protesters arrested for assaulting officers. Meanwhile, a stark contrast for President Trump's night, filled with pomp and circumstance in Washington. Commemorating the 250th birthday of the U.S. Army and his 79th birthday, culminating in a military parade along the National Mall. The first of its kind since 1991. The military estimates Saturday's parade cost as much as $45 million in taxpayer money.
Every other country celebrates their victories. It's about time
America did too. That's what we're doing tonight.
But just outside the perimeter, thousands gathered to protest.
More than 1,000 people gathered at Logan Circle, now marching down towards the White House. But they feel passionate about being specifically here in D.C. peacefully to make sure that the White House hears their opposition.
President Trump told reporters last week that protesters would be met with heavy force.
I am here today, here in D.C., is because he threatened us. Like, how crazy.
Roseanne Rodriguez is a veteran who served with the 82nd Airborne.
I have a right protected by the Constitution that says I can be out here.
Now, the White House later attempted to clarify, saying the president supports peaceful protests, but his comments were motivating factors for some to cancel their D.C. events. Notably, there were no reported arrests in Saturday's march.
Alex Brochet, thank you. And one of the larger protests was in Los Angeles, where marchers, also angry over Trump immigration policies, clashed with police. ABC's Alex Stone continues our team coverage. And Alex, you were there overnight when these demonstrations escalated.
Yeah, good morning, Whit. We were in the middle of all of it as it was unfolding overnight. The LAPD really battling back the crowds as the night went on. They had a very long night. The protesters had been peaceful through the day. Then it began to devolve as it went into night. All day, marchers made their way around the city. They were loud, but they were peaceful. One city estimate put it at about 20,000 people filling the streets of L.A., but the crowd grew around the federal building here. Around 4 p.m., the LAPD saying that they had chunks of concrete, bottles, and rocks being thrown at them. They moved in and cleared the streets, and we were there as they forcefully came in, pushing back the crowds using gas and less lethal rounds, firing them at the protesters who would not leave. Late overnight, the LAPD again gained control of the streets around the federal building. And here outside the federal building, the National Guard, active duty Marines, they have been on duty here. They are protecting the building. Gio.
All right, Alex Stone, thank you so much for your reporting. Let's go ahead and switch gears here and talk about Pope Leo, because he's pitching a message of hope and unity to a crowd gathered at his favorite baseball stadium. The Pontiff delivered a message. It was a video message to 30,000 people Saturday at Rate Field, the home of the Chicago White Sox. In his remarks, Pope Leo urged young people to rediscover their faith. He also called on Catholics to be a light of hope and make the world a better place. The message marks Pope Leo's first direct address to the U.S. I bet that was very exciting for the folks there.
Very, very cool.
Turn now to the Stanley Cup final. Overnight, the Panthers looking red hot, moving within one win away of a second straight Stanley Cup. ABC's Ike Ajachi joins us. Hasn't slept for 3 months now between the NHL, the NBA. What do we got?
Keep it coming. NFL,
yeah.
I'm ready to get to it right now.
Yeah.
Right? Anyway, this was a massive, pivotal game right now, okay? And it was really all in Edmonton. And the Florida Panthers, guess what? They took that commanding step towards back-to-back Stanley Cup titles, defeating the Edmonton Oilers 5-2. Brad Marchand, guess what? He was the story of the night, scoring 2 highlight reel goals, one in the first period and another in the third to spark the Panthers' offense. Now, his performance puts him in rare company with Mario Lemieux as the only modern-era players to score 5 or more goals in 2 different Stanley Cup finals. Now, Florida's defense, they were just as impressive, smothering Edmonton's high-powered attack and limiting the Oilers to just 21 shots. Now, Connor McDavid finally finding the net for his first goal in the series in the third period, but yeah, it just wasn't enough to spark a comeback. Sam Bennett, Sam Reinhart, and Eetu Luostarinen also scored for the Panthers, who now lead the series 3-2. And the Panthers, they do have a chance to clinch their second straight championship on home ice in Sunrise on Tuesday night if the Oilers can force a Game 7. Guess what? It's going to be back in Edmonton next Friday. And for now, the Panthers are just one win away from hockey's ultimate prize, guys.
I love the U.S.-Canada rivalry.
Really?
Too.
Yeah.
It just
Bring it
juices
back.
up the whole thing. All right, let's go to the NBA now, because the Thunder tied up the series 2-2. What can we expect in the pivotal game tomorrow?
Yeah, that's right. So the stage is set for this crucial showdown. The Thunder surged late in Game 4, but the Pacers, they've proven they can win on the road. Experts say Oklahoma City needs to trust their core, lean on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and get more from their bench, especially Alex Caruso, who's been clutch off the pine. As for Indiana, they got to stay composed under pressure, keep that ball moving, and exploit their speed. If they can handle the Thunder's defensive intensity and avoid late-game droughts, they'll have a real shot in Oklahoma City. Now, this series is now best of 3 with the title on the line. All the action is going down at 8:30 p.m. Eastern tomorrow, right here on ABC, guys.
You better take a nap.
Yep, take a nap.
Get a nap today, Ike.
Maybe next week.
Oh, thank you, Ike. Appreciate it. Coming up here on Good Morning America, the week ahead in the Sean Diddy Combs trial, as a judge reconsiders the removal of one juror.
And screen time time concerns. What a new study says about how much can be too much for young kids.
And social media dads sharing their wisdom with all on this Father's Day. We'll be right back here on GMA, our last Sunday from Times Square.
Dad! Oh, Dad! Oh, Dad! Ah! Head for the fireplace!
All right, welcome back to GMA. It is Father's Day, and you can treat your dad to a classic adventure on the big screen. Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade is back in theaters nationwide this weekend. The Harrison Ford and Sean Connery-led film is the third installment in the Indiana Jones franchise. The 1989 film is a family affair as Indy and his father go on an action-packed quest. I absolutely loved that movie.
Me too.
Classics.
So good.
Although, as an adult, I made my kids watch Raiders of the Lost Ark. And
How'd that
they
go
were way
over?
too young. The melting faces.
Oh, yeah, that's scary. Yeah.
The 80s TV ratings, you know, it's a little bit different back then, but great movies for sure. All right, let's take a look at the top headlines that we're following right now. The probe into that deadly Air India crash is getting some help from U.S. investigators now. A team from the NTSB is expected to arrive at the crash site today. More than 270 people died when that flight crashed just moments after takeoff. The plane's flight data recorder has been recovered. It's expected to provide more insight into what went wrong.
A dramatic rescue after two hikers were struck by lightning on a mountain in Colorado. The two men went off route near the summit of Torrey's Peak and called a guide to find their way back. While on the phone, they were both hit by lightning. Rescuers quickly responded and airlifted the men to safety at more than 14,000 feet. This marks the highest helicopter rescue in Colorado history.
Wow, incredible. And Caitlin Clark makes a roaring return to the WNBA. Clark missed 5 games with the Indiana Fever because of a quad injury. But last night, she wasted no time, scoring 3 straight three-pointers in 38 seconds. Clark put up a total of 32 points, leading the Fever to a victory over the New York Liberty. Congratulations to her. Good to see her in action.
She's on fire. Yep. All right, we start this half hour with the verdict watch in the Karen Reed retrial. Reed is accused of killing her police officer boyfriend. She denies it. Now 7 women and 5 men will decide her fate. We're also tracking the latest in the Sean Diddy Combs trial. And ABC News legal contributor Brian Buckmeyer joins us now. Brian, good morning to you. It's always great to have you. So let's go ahead and start with Karen Reed. Jury deliberations resume tomorrow. The defense raising some concerns about the complexity of the jury instructions now.
Yeah, when it comes to the jury instructions, it's almost like you have to go to law school. It basically reads, if this, then go to this. If not this, then go to this. If not this, don't consider this, consider something else. And what the defense is arguing here is that similar to the first trial, it's very confusing for a juror, and they are worried that they're going to have the same result as the first trial. They were made the point that there are 7 different iterations where Karen Reed can be found guilty, but only one where she can be found not guilty. The defense saying that somewhat, and in my opinion as well, I agree, that's somewhat biased, leaning towards one side rather than another.
And Brian, both sides delivered their closing statements last week. What are their strongest arguments?
So I think for the Commonwealth, their strongest argument looks at the motivation as they perceive it. The video that we saw where Karen Reed and John O'Keefe might have been arguing with each other, some of the interviews that Karen Reed actually gave after the first trial, as well as some of the evidence that points to some of the rearview mirror shards being found in John O'Keefe's body. Now, I know I mentioned 3 there, but it's not about quantity, it's about quality, because the defense has a very strong argument of that there being no evidence of an actual collision. And that would make Karen Reed not guilty outright.
Brian, let's talk about the Sean Diddy Combs case for a second here, because a juror could be getting dismissed over concerns that he doesn't live in the Bronx. So how does something like this even happen?
Yeah, so whenever you're a juror in a case, you have to be within that jurisdiction. And the Southern District of New York occupies Manhattan, the Bronx, Westchester, and I believe also Orange County. So this juror said that he did reside in the Bronx for at least 4 or 5 days, but has a girlfriend in New Jersey. Throughout the trial, an offhanded comment, to one of the employees or one of the workers in the courthouse by the juror said that he moved to New Jersey with his girlfriend. So now he's outside of the jurisdiction. The judge had asked questions back and forth to the person, and it seemed to be unclear as to what was going on. They seemed to be a little evasive. That's where you get the issue of lack of candor. Now, Xavier Donaldson, the defense attorney, led the argument that he should still maintain his position on the jury. The judge made a decision and then came back and said, you know what, we'll think about it. So Monday morning, we'll find out the determination of whether or not he's on the jury or juror number 13 takes his place.
So that'll definitely be something to watch closely. Also, another big headline was Kanye West arriving at the courthouse. You were there, saw it firsthand. What happened after he walked in?
Yeah, I think if you continue this video, you might actually see my hand as he throws up a peace sign to me. But in that video, yeah, there I am right there in the gray suit. He walked into court. He was only there for about 20 minutes. He attempted to get into the main courtroom where Sean Combs would have been and the jurors, but he was actually not on the list to get in. So instead, he went into what's called the overflow room. There are 2 rooms where there's a large video screen where you can see what's going on. He was actually accompanied by Sean Combs' son, Christian Combs. He was in one of the overflow rooms where no one was there. But as we all started to figure out where he was, when about 20 of us or so got in there, he decided to leave and walk out. Again, only there for about 20 minutes.
All right, the trial just gets wilder and wilder. Brian Buckmeyer, thank you, my friend. And by the way, happy Father's Day to you.
Thank you as well. Happy Father's Day to Whit and anyone else watching as well.
All right. Thank you so much.
One of the largest of its kind studies on kids and screen time and how it affects emotional and social well-being. Joining us is ABC News medical correspondent, Dr. Darian Sutton. Good Sunday to you, Dr. Sutton. Thanks for being here. So, Dr. Sutton, there's a 5- and a 7-year-old in the studio who I hope are listening. The school year may be ending, and kids may have more time to turn on their screens. Tell us about the study and why it's so important to know these findings.
These studies are so helpful. They're digging in a little deeper in terms of how screen time affects children in terms of their social and emotional health. This is a study from the American Psychological Association. It's a meta-analysis, and we love those because they combine data from different studies to paint a more detailed picture. And in this study, they found that following over 300,000 children for close to 6 months, that more screen time, the more screen time a child had, the more likely they were to not meet their expectations for stage in emotional and social development. The more screen time children had, the more they were likely to internalize anxiety and depression, the more they were likely to externalize aggression and hyperactivity. And conversely, the more screen time children use, or in general, when children experience emotional stress, they were more likely to turn to screens to cope, a sign that might be a sign of a need for more emotional support.
Wow. Very alarming. And this is something we've talked about for a long time, violent video games. But it's amplified now because of all the screen time, the devices and smartphones and things. So what did the study say about violent video games and whether that actually impacts a kid's behavior?
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting. Gaming in general was more associated with negative effects compared to recreational or educational experiences. And the shooting games are more associated with aggression and anxiety. Now, an important note, the average age was under the age of 11 in this study. Most of these popular games, the minimum is 17. So it's really important to pay attention to those maturity guidelines.
Kids, I mean, the young kids are playing those games.
I know, and it's very, very difficult. It's very difficult.
All right, I don't have kids, but I'm an uncle. Yeah. And I know that it can be really tough to set those screen time limits. So how do you do it?
I would guide you to the American Academy of Pediatrics. If you don't have children, they have really good standards on what are the minimums and metrics for time in general of spending on screens. Under the age of 0, or excuse me, 0, where am I going? Under the age of 2, under the age of 2, there is 0 screen time that you should have. Between 2 and 5, no more than an hour. Parents should watch it with their children. Above the age of 5, no more than 2 hours. That includes all of us, including everyone above the age of 5. We're trying to do no more than 2 hours of that recreational screen time. Does not include.
Repeat that. That's for all of us.
Does not include work and education, but for all of us. I think most importantly, when you're trying to make these metrics happen, be accountable, making sure that you're picking up your phone and paying attention to when you are, because kids mimic it. Calculate how much time they're spending, and then join them on these apps. Studies show that when parents watch their images with children, they didn't see these negative effects. So if you can't beat them, join them.
If you can pull that device out of their hands.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Darian.
Gonna have to crack down.
No, I'm not the fun police. Coming up here on Good Morning America, the dads making a name for themselves on social media, sharing fatherly advice and even family recipes. Stick around. Okay, we are back now on GMA on this Father's Day. We are celebrating all the dads out there and taking a look at some who are sharing their wisdom on social media. Will Gans is finding them all.
I'm finding a few of them. Many dads are sharing lovely advice all over the place, but here are 3 you need to know about. They say when a dad doesn't have your hand, he's got your back, and that's what a group of real-life dads is trying to show their own kids and millions of others on TikTok.
This Father's Day, real-life dads are sharing their family recipes.
They were making chocolate chip cookies. Daddy's helping me and I'm helping Daddy.
Their practical tips.
I'm going to show you how a dad patches a hole in a wall.
And their dad jokes.
Since they say babies can't talk when they come out, like, how do we know if it's sick? Like, and if it do get sick, do I bring it back to you?
On TikTok, where searches for dad's advice are up over 1,000% over the last 6 months.
Let's get to it.
More and more users turning to social media for a stand-in super dad. Dads like David Gates, an Army veteran and self-taught chef, or Aaron Moore, an actor and comedian, and Bo Patterson,
If you've got a broken light bulb like this, here's a trick for getting it out.
who's racked up 4 million followers on his account. Dad advice from Bo.
I'm just a dad. I don't claim to be an expert at anything. Let's build a bookshelf.
51 million likes later, Bo says his mission to pay it forward is a family affair.
My dad was a huge influence on my life, and I could always go to him whenever I needed help. And by making these videos, it's very satisfying to know that I'm able to help people out.
And one last bit of advice on this Father's Day.
If it's possible, pick up the phone and call your dad. If it's not possible, try to remember the good times that you had with him.
And speaking of good times, we've got a little surprise for our own in-house dad. Whit, we heard you're a fan of brisket.
You're
this is from
our
friends next door at Virgil's.
Now we're talking. This
I mean,
is
you could share if you want.
No, I'm good. I'm good. This is great. By the way, while I dive into this, I think I'm going to post some advice on social media.
Oh, yeah, you should.
I'm into lighting in the home. If you want to know about kelvins,
Kelvins,
and
he is
color
your
temperature,
man.
if your kelvins are too hot, if you're 4,000 kelvins in your house, get out of here. 3,000, 2,700.
No, I'm all
There you
about
go.
good lighting, so I'll take all the advice
Happy
you've got to
Father's
give.
Day.
Happy
Also because you're a
Father's Day.
TV dad.
Dude, that's
Happy
good.
Father's Day to my husband, too.
Well, guys,
Oh.
it's a special Sunday, isn't it? As we wrap up Good Morning America's final broadcast from Times Square's. For more than 26 years from our home here at the crossroads of the world, we've brought you the most urgent breaking news, stories that grip the nation, stories that celebrated you, our viewers, through moments of joy. We've also welcomed the biggest names in sports, entertainment, politics, and beyond.
And you have been with us every step of the journey, but with every ending comes a new beginning. And tomorrow we open a brand new chapter, broadcasting from our state-of-the-art studio in Hudson Square. It may be a new set, but the same GMA team and dedication to news you're used to.
And before we go here, we want to honor the incredible team behind the scenes here who make it all happen. And there's one person who's been here from the very start, our operations producer, Larry Peterson.
There's our
Look at this
The
guy.
first person to turn on the lights right here in Times Square nearly 26 years ago. And now he is here to turn them off. Larry, the honors are yours.
Flip the switch.
No turning back.
Oh, here we go. Flip the switch.
I flipped.
He did.
He did.
I flipped.
The lights are
There we go.